Thank the chairman, and as I indicated, I really appreciate the chairman for having this hearing. I hope we can find common ground on one conspicuous set of facts, is that the backlog is just unacceptable. And then I'd like to thank Mr. Berman for joining me and my colleague, Mr. Cohen, on that legislation that clearly should be adhered to, of counts untried, and to even include them in essence acquitted or other matters. So thank you for that. But also let me, to the gentleman bringing apples and oranges, the case dealing with the family member of the president was by a Trump-appointed U.S. attorney, and so whatever preference or bias could have been imposed, we should ask that Republican-appointed U.S. attorney what his or her reasoning might have been, in this instance, him. So why don't we just stay focused on, I think, a very important topic. And I do understand that Mr. Forbes served 4 years, and I thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the point I was making is that his clemency process took just a month. Mr. Osler, I'd like to proceed with questioning in your direction, because I like the words that you have said, systemically impacting a person that has the least. The system does that, and I think that we should be concerned about that. Let me ask you, Professor, can you walk us through how past administrations have typically reached pardon decisions and what processes are typically followed? And I have a series of questions, so.
Yeah. Yes, and thank you for that question. It's evolved over time. The current system developed organically. Nobody planned this. It was basically people delegating to those lower down, the Attorney General deciding not to be involved. It has never been thought out. Now, previous administrations used processes where the Attorney General would meet directly with the President. That was usually somebody that the President trusted. They would meet regularly. And you saw that if you look at the clemency statistics, very often the year with the highest number of grants, including for Ronald Reagan, would be the third year or the sixth year or the fifth year.
Let me proceed with some other questioning. And then I want to acknowledge Amy Puva, Weldon Angelos, Jason Pye, Candia Milton, and Jeff Cook McCormick, who I had opportunity to engage with on this topic. I think they too recognize 17,000 backlog of cases. But did the Trump White House follow these typical processes in exercising his clemency powers?
I believe that they did in 25 of the cases that were granted. So about 1/8 of the cases where there was a grant.
So how did the Trump White House deviate from the procedures?
They had an informal process, as I understand it, that sometimes involved people who had submitted a petition and sometimes those who submitted once they decided to press for it, especially in that last period. It's hard to know what process was actually used. I wasn't a part of it, and so that opaqueness is the opposite of the transparency that this kind of constitutional imperative should require.
Well, in essence, we are throwing sort of oatmeal up against the wall to a certain extent, which is not helpful justice, I would take.
Well, I can tell you this. I know a lot of the people who didn't get granted in that period, and it was heartbreaking to watch the list come out and know that people whose petitions had been entered years before, who'd done everything right, who'd followed the rules, and had remarkable reformations, weren't on that list.
So when I asked the question, what impact this had on those seeking pardons, it just crushed them. Is that what you're saying? They followed the rules and they didn't see any light at the end of the tunnel?
That's correct. I received a message recently from a woman named Sarah Carlson. We did her pardon petition. She's been out for several years. She works for a faith-based organization called Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge. She does fantastic work. She's proven that she deserves a pardon. We submitted her petition years ago. She doesn't know why she's not getting a chance, why she isn't getting the fair shake.
So Sarah's her first name?
Yes.
Sarah, and then there's a Ross Albright, and there is a Dr. Hamilton, and then there's a Reverend Kirby John Caldwell, who paid every cent of his alleged unfortunate circumstance, every cent back to everyone. Let me just quickly, is there anything that you think Congress can do about the clemency process? How can we improve it? And with regard to the extensive backlog of clemency petitions, it's an embarrassment to the Constitution. What can Congress do to help these individuals? Can you just combine those two answers?
Yeah, gentlelady's time has expired. You may answer.
Yes, pass the Fix Clemency Act, focus on that, and push this president to take clemency seriously. Not only has he not granted many individual grants, he hasn't denied any by presidential action either. He's just ignored it.
Mr. Chairman, quickly, enter by unanimous consent the memorandum to the Honorable Donald Trump on November 6, 2020, and the executive grant of clemency signed by Donald J. Trump, President, December 22, 2020. That's unanimous consent.
Without objection.
Thank you.
So ordered.